I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm not gonna say nothing at all.
All right, well, Andrew can join us shortly, I'm sure. Oh, wait, there he is. Hey,
Were you
Andrew.
guys calling me?
What's up?
Were you guys calling me?
Oh, I think, yeah, we were trying to make sure you were.
Yeah, I thought we were on break, my bad.
No, we were.
We
So,
were on break.
We didn't want to take off without you, and everybody else was back, and we didn't set a specific time.
Oh,
blah, 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 blah.
no, we're good now, thank you.
So I think we're good to go now. We got Andrew, thank you, Zane. And back on track. Let's see, so I like to, oh man, that's right there. We'll figure it out. I'd like to start out with some type of, well, just maybe a little introduction first. So for starters, I'm Joshua James, and of course this is your MBA program. The bathrooms are down the hall, there's a fire. Follow Dr. Roddy, and
You have to run fast.
all right, how many of you have had a job that you just absolutely loved and you would not want to change a single thing? Everybody's raising their hands, right? So some of the things we'll learn in this lesson in chapter 12, recognizing employee contributions with pay, it will help you be able to get closer to that ideal, wonderful job for your employees. Because you guys are all MBA students, you're likely going to be the ones shaping the organization, shaping the way employees are compensated for their efforts, right? So you have the opportunity to make changes in your organizations wherever you're at and you're contributing. Now there are several objectives. As you can see, there's 7 there. And what I kind of did is broke it into, I like 3. So kind of combine some stuff. In the first Joshua version of objectives, we'll look at how pay influences individual employees and some of the fundamental pay programs, and then some of the pros and cons. And then I lumped the next category into how to combine a balanced approach to the pros and cons. And then let's see some of the pros and cons for the way that we typically compensate executives. And then lastly, we'll go through some of the process issues, and we'll compare pay strategy to organizational strategy, talk a little bit about how those line up. And then I believe Dr. Roddy has a video for us. So, getting rolling, again, these are the objectives that I more or less covered, and the way that I like to do things, I have all of your names in front of me. I will try to remember to say your name before I ask you a question, if I ask you a question directly, rather than ask the question and then put your name at the end, because then it's like, oh wait, what did he just say? I like a very interactive class, and we're not just going to go through every single slide like Dr. Roddy does sometimes. We'll skip around a little bit and put emphasis on different syllables to get our point across. Let's see. So, getting rolling. Got this as our controller. Evaluating pay programs. What are some of the different pay programs that you guys have had?
Are you talking about incentives, bonuses, pay for performance?
Yeah, those are all.
Yeah. So.
And we'll kind of get into a little bit more of each one.
So pay for performance.
You had that personally, Latrina?
Yes.
Oh, really? How did you like that? What were some of the pros and cons of that?
Well, I didn't like it.
Oh. Okay.
Because it was kind of wonky, and, the reason why was that I was, rated very high, but when it came to the percent, I got a lower percentage. So it was some issues.
So you got a
there.
high
They got
rating.
sued too, yeah,
Wow.
so some other stuff going on. But the company ended up getting sued because, I mean, you know, it's like, you have to match. You have to match if I'm rated higher and you're saying we can get 1 to 7% and I get 2%, but you rated me high saying that I, you know, excel this, that, and the other, then where is the disconnect at?
Yeah.
And so anyways, they ended up fixing it and ended up giving me a high percentage, but I have had that and I, you know, it was not a good experience.
Yeah. That
If that makes
sounds
sense.
pretty terrible there. Anyone else have a quick story before we keep moving? Thank you, Latrina. Let's see. Yeah, all of this stuff, we're not just gonna go reading the slides, so. What can you guys tell me about incentive effect? What does that mean to you guys? And you can look at the
Usually-
slide and come up with your own wording or whatever.
But usually it's to enforce behavior.
To enforce behavior. Ah, okay. So to drive the type of desired behavior by the stakeholders? Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have like incentive programs and things of that nature, usually it's to push a certain product, so it's to drive behavior.
A specific product. So if you sell 15 of these, you get this bonus because we really need to sell this thing.
And usually it's tied to the strategic plan of the organization.
So organizational strategy and pay structure, pay strategy, how those kind of get linked up, yeah.
So usually if you incentivize, then your base pay is usually a little lower.
What do we think about that? What do you think about that, Juan? Juan, how about this? Juan, what do you think about that? And you're not off the hook either, Andrew. I'll try to remember to include you.
That's a tough one because I'm not pretty sure about what is incentive, like that word over there, so.
Oh, the word incentive?
Yeah.
So, Tony, what does the word incentive mean to you?
I don't know
How would you
but I know
explain
what
it to
means,
Juan?
But
So you cannot ask me because I
Yeah.
You can ask Gary.
what would you, I don't know, motivate you or push
Yeah.
you forward to, you know, like how you give a dog a bone to do something, so, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about that part about compensation, having different compensation, like the bonus and all that stuff over there.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know, monetary compensation or just status give you a lot of motivation to continue striving to whatever goal it is.
Yeah. So that would be a quality goal versus Colisha was talking about a numbers goal, right? And that's a goal. They're both goals, absolutely. That's interesting that there's a couple different versions there, right? So incentivizing quality, if we reach a small number, usually, right, minimum number of defects in product, if we keep it below this threshold, then everybody gets a granola bar, right? Or if we sell 1,300 of these widgets, then everybody gets a bonus or the last day of the month off or something like that, right? Cool.
Also, like for insurance agents, they get paid in commissions, right?
In commission.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Now, I don't have a bag full of granola bars. Eventually it's gonna switch to smaller things like gum and Hershey's Kisses. And you get one too because you were helping us out. That was the last granola bar. The rest are Hershey's Kisses and gum. But it's the old school, right? The, what, double bubble? Remember with the little crown? Okay, let's see. move on, or we'll be here all night. Am I going up or down? 6, 5, 6, yeah, that's up. All right. Tell me about expectancy. What do you guys think? Abby, what do you think about expectancy? What comes to mind when you start to think about expectancy?
That I don't know. I haven't really heard of the expectancy theory.
Yeah. So what if every time you got to 1,300 widgets sold, not every time, but for like 3 months in a row, they gave you the last day off?
I would expect another day off.
In the 4th month,
Yeah,
if you guys got 1,300,
yeah,
you start to expect a kiss every time you do something good.
yeah.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden, it becomes an expectation instead of a reward,
Oh.
right? So you got to be careful of that. If I teach another chapter, are you guys going to expect me to bring a little bag
Yeah.
of candy?
Oh, absolutely. A bigger one.
A bigger one?
I'm gonna expect more granola bars.
So tell me a little bit about extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation. I really enjoy this particular subject. Andrew, what do you think about that? And
Yeah.
feel free to paraphrase from the slide if you want to, if it's not something you're familiar with.
Well, it's not, but I mean, the concept definitely makes sense. I mean, every time you start to get a pat on the back, more often, good, you're gonna want a cookie or something.
Yeah.
Every time you do something good or put in any extra work, you're gonna get used to that.
Yeah. Here's you a piece of gum.
Thank you, that's my cookie.
So there was some following on with expectancy theory that Andrew was kind of talking about there, getting used to it and wanting a piece of gum or a cookie, I think in Andrew's case. Wish I had a cookie. And so then that would be kind of an extrinsic motivator, right? What's an example of how about Stephanie? What would be an example of an intrinsic motivator? And again, feel free to paraphrase from the slides. Am I blocking it? Woo! Almost fell over for you guys. That would have been entertaining,
My seat
right?
does that at home, so I know how you feel. My
Just
seat
a
at home does
little
that.
bit higher.
There you
Then,
go.
there we go. Now, hopefully Abby will not have to laugh as much. At least not for the same reason. Okay, so intrinsic motivation, right? Naturally, well, don't want to take Stephanie's thunder here. A reward? It's like a reward, but it's like a reward on the inside, right? So if you're Latrina and you're helping out a family and they're better off for what you did for them, then you get like this warm fuzzy, right? So it's a reward or an award, but kind of on the inside. So there can be a natural motivation that flows from the nature of the work, if you will. And there's different ways. I'd love to get into it, but I don't know that we necessarily have time to talk about transformational leadership versus transactional leadership and the nuances there. Essentially, transactional leadership focuses on extrinsic motivation and transformational leadership focuses on intrinsic motivation. Did I say extrinsic the first time?
You did.
And again, that's something I really am passionate about, so I could talk a lot on those subjects. But I want you guys to talk. I want to try to talk less. agency theory. So what are some times, let's see, Carla, you have been part of leadership and high-level stakeholder in some of your orgs. Tell us about a time, or give us an example of maybe how your goals might be different than the workers' goals, right? So kind of what I want to talk about a little bit on this one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so, well, like when I owned the business with my dad, like, my dad and I obviously, we cared what our job looked like. Our employees sometimes came to work and didn't give a crap what our project looked like because they came for a paycheck.
They came for a paycheck.
I mean, my dad and I made a really good living for 20 years. I will not take away from that. We made a really good living for 20, a way better living than my current living, but we took pride in what we did too. We genuinely loved what we did, and that was important to us. Like, and we would have liked for them to feel that way too, but sometimes that's not the way things work out, because more often than not, if you're an employee and not an executive or a stakeholder in the company that you work for, I don't mean candy, but thank you. They just don't put forth the effort, and it's kind of that way now where I work. I mean, I don't make nowhere near what I made when
you
I
were
owned
the
my business,
owner.
obviously, but I don't have to either. I live a really comfortable life after doing what I did, that I don't have to make that money, but I genuinely love my job. So I have that intrinsic motivation that we just talked about, because I
Now, what about your
genuinely
coworkers?
love my job.
Uh-huh.
Patient care is really important to me.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of younger people who work as medical assistants. Like, I'm not a medical assistant, but I work with a lot of medical assistants, and they can care, like, they'll send people over to our side who already have what they're sending them to our side of the facility for, because they didn't take the time to ask the question, because they don't care. They get them in their rooms, they see the doctor, and they get them out of the room. They don't care to find out the information. And I mean, some of it is youth, some of it is, people come for a paycheck. They don't really care.
Yeah.
They don't have those same goals unless there's the thought that they're going to move up, or they're going to have a better position at some point or another. People tend not to care enough to do better, or to do more, or to go that extra mile.
So it seems to you, Carla, that if
That's
people
everywhere.
are kind of at that glass ceiling, or even by choice, they just don't care to go any higher or seek any more responsibility, that they tend to gravitate to the lowest common denominator, do the minimum they can get away with.
They do, but I mean, like, most of them are in college to do something different than what they currently do. So,
wow, okay.
And that's everywhere. That's not
Sure.
just where I work. That's in you can find that in any organization that you were to walk into. I mean, obviously, you'll have those people, like the Amazon thing that we read in chapter 10. Like, you'll have those people who, like, work in the warehouse at Amazon that are happy to be working in the warehouse and will work there forever, but you have those that are working there while they're in college. That's not their forever job. So
Yeah. So, Latrina, did you get a kiss? Am I gonna get
No.
in trouble for?
No, here. Thank you though.
Latrina, if we were trying to up the intrinsic motivation level of Carla's coworkers, because Carla's intrinsic motivation level is already high, what are some things we could potentially do to help those folks be more intrinsically motivated? And this is a helping profession,
I think that it has
right?
to do with also, some things that you can do I mean, there's several things you can do, but the first thing is you have to have buy-in, and they have to find that this is important, that they're
Mhm.
making a difference, that this is gonna change and make them, a better person, or they're going to.
So helping them to recognize that
Yeah,
they're making a difference.
and so,
Or
and
that
then
they could be.
also, I mean, it could also be, incentives, you could give them to make them be more motivated. I don't know what the issues are,
Sure.
but
sure.
you have to get a foundation of what is the issue. So for instance, at our job that I work at, I work for a state agency. And the state agency right now that I work for is doing a $3,500 bonus for any previous worker. Well, if they did any analyzation on anything and had any type of questions and did surveys, they would know that individuals did not leave before the money. Most likely they left because of the people.
Huh.
And so therefore offering $3,500 is not going to bring any previous workers back because they didn't wanna work there to begin with, for a
Hmm.
reason. So my question is
It's
to
people
our
related.
HR department, did you all find out why these people left? I know for a fact it was not money, cause we know that money don't keep people, people keep people.
Hmm.
So that's what we have to do, is get a foundation of why they have not bought into the culture, into the district, wanting to be there and help people and go further.
Yeah.
And it could be it's not their passion. It could be that this is a entry point for them and they have other goals. So it might be up to the person who's hiring and doing intake and doing more surveys on the front end to find out what these people are really interested in. And then if they're interviewing and then they say, hey, is this somewhere where you wanna be for 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 2 years? Where do you see yourself in a year? Are you
Right.
currently in college? Okay then, well then most likely if you're in college for accounting and you are a medical assistant, most likely you're not gonna be in that position for much longer.
See,
So I
Carla's
think it
back here
starts
taking
on-
notes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I
that's
think
good
it starts
stuff.
at the beginning, just with the hiring and really going deeper when you interview these individuals. And you can't, figure it all out, cause some people just
Sure.
lie
Oh
to
boy.
get a job. But it all comes out in the wash.
Nobody in here's ever done
Oh, and
that.
then
So
some
addressing the
employers
front
hire
end and
just
addressing
to
the back end too, right? In the exit
Bodies
interviews.
there.
Yeah, some people do.
What were you saying, Kalisha?
I said some employers or some managers hire just to get warm bodies.
Oh
Yes.
boy.
And it's up to that manager to help
Yeah.
employee understand the mission, the purpose,
goals.
Oh.
and the goals of the organization.
Yeah.
And so, and maybe that employee isn't there for the long haul, but like Latina said, if the manager shows that, hey, you're important to me, I wanna know what your goals are, maybe I can help you with this transferable skill, that can
Mm.
buy in.
Yeah.
An employee would
That's
put
really
more
cool.
into their work than
That's a
what
cool
they
idea.
initially did.
Yeah, Zane, did you say you worked in a shoe place?
Well, I worked at Academy, but then I also
Academy.
did start a shoe store with my senior year of high school. But it's owned by my best friend now, it's still running. And he ran into that problem as far as when they hired their first employee because it was just the two co-owners until what's that? Last April they hired their first part-time guy. It didn't quite work out too well because they were he was more focused on kind of just bare minimum,
Yeah.
kind of just help the customer out. But while thing that my friend does that owns he's one of the co-owners, he's big on really developing that personal interaction, and that's what keeps their return business because it's
So the personal
it's aftermarket
interaction.
shoes and stuff like that, so in vintage clothing.
Okay.
So it's a really niche group and community. So it's big on that as
So one of the owners, your friend, is all about developing the relationship with the customer.
Yeah.
And it seems like maybe he's having a little bit of trouble getting the workers to embrace that.
Yeah, the first guy that they hired he's no longer there. They have two kids now that are helping out. They're doing really well.
Cool.
It's a small business.
hey, it's just a microcosm of big business, right?
That's right. It makes up the biggest part of the market in the US.
Yeah.
And what have they done differently, or like, are they grooming them, or putting them in like a program to where they're gonna teach them more the business side, or, you know, the selling side, or the, you know, product side, like, what have they done differently this time around?
He definitely has a better plan, like program in place,
Okay.
and a lot of
To do
he's-
more development or something?
Yeah, mission statement, stuff like that. I mean, this
Yeah.
business has been open since, it's been open for, in March it'll be 4 years, but I mean, we opened it, we were 18 when we opened it. And he's 22 now, and the, two people he's working for him are in high school. Or, well, no, one's a freshman in college now. The other kid's in high school. But, yeah, he has a lot better, program set now, and, I talked with him about his stuff, and he has a really good mission statement, and,
Nice.
Mission
Yeah, better-
statements make a big difference.
yes.
I used to work for St. Anthony, and I remember the mission statement today. It was through our exceptional health care, we reveal the healing presence of God. And
Wow.
I worked for so many companies, I couldn't tell you what the mission statement is, but it just resonates
Yeah.
with you. And I worked in benefits, so I didn't work with the patients, but I still took that mission statement to heart and figured out a way to make my work purpose.
Hmm.
It
So-
became intrinsic.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Mission statements, I tell you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kalisha.
Yeah.
That's really good. And thank you, Zane, for sharing about the shoe company. Yeah. Let's see. We'll see if we can't catch up a little bit on these slides. So, talked about diverging interests and stakeholders. Carla kicked us off a little on that one. This is agency theory, more agency theory stuff. All right, let's see. Yeah, we could go into that. I think I'll let you guys look at that on your own. So to me, this is kind of like Latrina talked about when there are expectations, and she thought because she was a high performer that she was going to get closer to the 7, and she got the 2, and it ended up being a mess, and people actually got in trouble, right? So there's promise and peril. And I think, was it Kalisha that talked about how when you have base pay plus some variable pieces based on when you make a certain threshold, or like Juan mentioned, a level of quality, a certain level of quality, then part of your pay can be connected to that. So this is a little bit different because earlier we were kind of talking about bonuses versus this is folding it in. And so there's risk on the part of the employee. There's pros and cons, right? In that if it's part of your pay, you're saying, I'm willing to take a little bit of risk that if we don't meet that goal, then I'm not gonna get that portion of the pay. But if we exceed it, then I'm gonna get more than I would have received otherwise. So there's a little bit of risk splitting it up between the stakeholders and the workers. And that can be good for both parties, but you wanna balance it, and that's one of our big things, is balancing the pros and cons. So if it's too one-sided, then the employers can make out like bandits, but the employees put too much risk into it and didn't hit that goal, and they're like, I can't live on 33% of what I was supposed to make. So balance, right? Where's that balance? And that's an art. There's certainly science to it, but you have to really think about it. Oh boy, a lot of words. Yeah, so this is more of the specifics, and you guys can look at that. Merit pay and merit bonuses. Amanda, what has your experience been like with merit pay and or merit bonuses? Because you and I think, come from a place where they
There is no merit pay or merit
attempt
increase
that.
on, unless there's a cost of living rate increase by the legislatures. So state employees don't see a merit.
State employees, okay. So, what does that look like for your government friends at the Fed level?
I don't know in the state, so I never worked
Yeah.
federal on that aspect. The only
Yeah, so
time
yours is time in
as far as
service.
I mean, federal was military, but the only time you ever saw an increase in pay is when you moved up in rank.
Mm.
You don't see merit.
Yeah, right. So that's active duty, and you could get a bonus or something like that, or time off. Sometimes,
Not really.
not really.
No.
Bummer.
I mean, certifications might help, but
Yeah.
Yeah, we have merit increases where I work,
Yeah.
and it's based on performance, and we do have the compa ratio, and that goes along with the pay structure, and then the distribution of performance ratings, which kind of, I think Latrina kind of touched on it, where you get your performance review, you get a rating, and according to that rating, you get a percentage.
Mm.
And that's kind of how it works. Compensation is so broad.
It is.
Oh, goodness,
And,
there's so
you know,
many
like
ways
Tony
to
was
do it.
saying, there's different things are going to motivate different people, and so that's what we're kind of trying to open up a little bit, right, and explore and talk about. So let's see. So you actually had the. Sounds pretty formal. It sounds pretty similar to what's right behind me. And what are some other things you guys, somebody else can tell us about this type of merit increase? Thank you, Galisha.
Usually people who make more, who are higher in the pay scale,
Mm-hmm.
as you see there, the increase percentage is less, and they are not happy. So that compa ratio, usually that percentage is the percentage of the market rate, or, I've seen it done two ways. I was told one was wrong, so I don't know, like I said, comp is so complicated and it could be done different ways, but your range, so it looks like here, the range is 120%. So midpoint or market rate is 100%. So the more you make above market, the less of a percentage
Yes.
you get.
Oh, isn't that fun and fair for exceeds expectations, Latrina?
So you, yeah, you're like, I did all this.
And Latrina, you are awesome,
Yeah.
and you get 3%. Carla, what does the stinker get? Below expectations? And they're in this lower range, so they probably weren't making that much to begin with? Now,
But
wait a
nobody
minute.
knows that, see?
That's
And
the thing.
and that's what makes it hard to explain to employees. It's like, anyway, it's hard to explain sometimes.
Because then you don't know where an employee started out, you
Yeah,
know, and so then
so you like, so you talk it, like, the whole, don't talk, I see why
they say
at
don't
one point it
discuss that.
said, you know, employees were told, don't talk to anyone about your pay.
Uh,
Because of this here. So you were a superstar and you talk to someone who's barely pulling their weight and you're like, I got 1% more than that person?
Uh-huh.
Like I'm
No.
But where are they in the
supervising
range?
This is less than pulling your weight.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. A lot of times
Interesting.
people don't tell
Who
you the
wants to
whole
sign up and
story.
work under
Yeah.
this structure?
And I have to talk to myself too, to say, I don't know everyone's experience, I don't know what transferable experience they're bringing over. I don't know their education, you know, I don't know what they've done behind the scenes, if they've been on certain projects and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So when it all happened, I did have to, cause I talked to my mom about it, who was in HR at the time, but I did have to, she gave me a broader picture of how everything looked.
Mm-hmm.
So it helped me to accept what was going on, even though I
Sure.
still got an increase.
Yeah. All right, let's see. That's just a little more in-depth into that other slide. These are some specific characteristics that you guys can just take a look at for a second. Don't feel like we need to camp out on this much, but goes a little bit more into the details. Tell me a little bit about merit bonuses. We've been talking about merit pay. So what if you are this guy, Mr. or Mrs. exceeds expectations, and this is telling us the 111 to 120 that they're already in the higher end of the pay bracket in exceeds expectations, right? 100 would be right in the middle, right with the market, and then you could either make below that or above that. If you're this guy who's already, or gal, that's already getting paid a lot, and you exceeded expectations and you got 3%, how can we help that person feel a little bit better about their 3%?
Well, because the bonus is coming off of what they make, so if they make more, then that means even though the percentage is lower, they should still possibly have a higher bonus amount, if I'm not mistaken, is that right?
Well, it depends, always, right?
I'm just saying, you know, if it's going off of their base pay or what have you, it could be.
That's for sure, yeah. I mean, if it's just a percentage of base pay and that becomes your bonus, then yeah, that's gonna be a lot bigger than the other end of the spectrum. Kind of what I was thinking is that, you know, if you're the superstar, but you're already in the high end of the bracket and you only get 3%, maybe something we could do to help, if we have the ability, if our HR program allows it, we could do a merit bonus where, like, the books say we can only give you this much of a salary increase, but here's a bonus. I'm allowed to give you a bonus, and I want to do that because I think you're awesome, and I have these restrictions on me, but this is a liberty I do have, right?
So is this similar to a lump sum merit?
I think there are lots of different ways to distribute it, but yeah, it's merit bonus, right? So
That's what we do, we give them that small.
the small percentage of salary.
And then do a lump sum merit, keep the cost down on benefits and things of that nature.
And you don't have to give it to everybody, because the person who
Right.
does not exceed, then they're not gonna get the bonus anyway.
I
So,
think this might be the
okay.
same as a lump sum merit.
That's what it sounds like, yeah. Procedural justice in merit pay. If you guys wanna look into that, you're welcome to. Pay for performance programs. Well, again, it says relatively rare. We'll try not to camp out on this slide for too long. What do you guys think of this? So what would even be an example of a pay for performance program?
Could be time off, vacation.
like the incentive, like the incentive pay or that model.
So what about, one example that comes to mind is just the kid raking leaves, and he gets paid by the number of bags of leaves that he has at the end of the day, right? He doesn't get paid by the hour. They're choosing a pay for performance model, and he gets paid by the number of bags, right? I heard of a dad that had this was interesting, he had a flat level of compensation for his son to pick up the apples out of the yard before he would mow. And then he would deduct $1 from the flat compensation level for every apple that he missed. So that was not really a pay for performance, I just thought it was interesting, throw it in there. So given that example, what might be something that's close to this? Not children anymore, we'll get away from
In the oil boom days in Texas, a corner office with glassed-in windows would definitely be a pay for performance. If you did really well, you could get it.
Oh.
Is that still true today?
It's still true today.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Because my office is 4 walls and a hallway. You don't see nothing. Seeing some daylight might actually work.
Nice. So another example of a pay for performance that comes to mind, and it's not a perfect example, but like a waiter or a waitress, and this is a service versus a product, but that is moment by moment, right? You do a good job, you get more tips,
That's a good example.
right? And if you don't do as great a job, then you're getting $7.25.
Some people $3.27.
I would say I thought it was less than that, but no.
Well,
Yeah, waitresses,
Now-
I don't know what that is for you.
for waitresses and waiters, it is a wacky model. You start at, if I'm not mistaken, and this fits into what we're talking about, right? You start, and this is just another way to motivate people. It's another way to do business. You start at something like $3.25 an hour, and then from there you go up based on your tips, right? A little known piece of the puzzle is if you do so poorly that your average is less than $7.25, then the employer has to make up the difference to get you up to $7.25. So if you don't make a single tip the whole night and you're at $3.25 or whatever it was, then the employer pays the difference between $7.25 and $3.25 per hour. But as Zane would tell you, that server or waitress or waiter might get fired, like your friend's shoe guy, right? They didn't keep that guy around because he wasn't pulling his weight.
You know, I
He
mean, he did a
was-
good job, but it's not exactly what they were looking for, so
Yeah.
they parted ways. He was another high school kid, so.
Yeah. So anyway, just interesting pieces out there.
That's interesting.
And then, you know, it's like, well, I could go on, but I won't. Ooh, okay, here we go. I think we're getting close to the end here. Profit sharing, what number is this? 23, there's some more slides, but I think we'll start to kind of wrap it up in the last part. I think we can go through a little bit quickly. Profit sharing and ownership. So Carlo was an owner. There are some grocery stores that I've heard of where the employees, they're like employee owned.
Is that Aldi?
I believe so.
I think Aldi's like that.
Yeah. So Carla was saying that when she was the owner, she was motivated, right? She wanted to do a good job. She wanted to provide a good service, a good product, because the profits are coming back in her pocket. So if you're an Aldi employee, then that's a whole nother mindset, right? You've got this ownership mindset. And we could go more into the details of the advantages, pros and cons, disadvantages. One disadvantage that comes to mind, I'm not sure if it's on here or not, but you can have what's called a free rider effect, if I'm not mistaken. So if you've got 100 Aldi employees and they're all owners and they all benefit from the profits, then you can have a handful of folks slacking off and they're still getting the benefits of the profits, so that would be a free rider effect. That could definitely be a disadvantage, and we'll go a little bit into how to combat that. Oh, pushed the wrong button.
Here you go,
Profit sharing and ownership, okay. Employee ownership, talked about Aldi, thanks Sam. You identified that, right? Thank you. Stock options, oh, have you guys heard about the Walmart millionaires? They got stock options early on in Walmart, and I mean, it's like cashiers became millionaires. Yeah, Zane's shaking his head, he knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I don't think Sam minded, you know, he wanted to,
There's something with Apple too.
yeah,
Early Apple employees, that was stock incentives were big.
Yeah.
A lot of companies, I mean, that's something they'll go with because it's easy to do.
and then if you own stock in the company, you're an owner. You may not be, they're varying percentages, different employees are gonna be different percentages, but you own it.
Help them get going.
Yeah. We bought my son like one share of McDonald's stock for $100 or something. And when I go to McDonald's, I think about it differently.
That's awesome.
You know?
That's interesting.
It's a tiny little bit. It's like I said, $100 or something, right? But it does something to
You're the
you.
largest producer of food in the world.
Wow.
McDonald's is.
Here we go, group incentives, team awards. So this is kind of in line with some of the things we've been talking about. What I wanted to mention here, let's see, does it get a little bit into it? There we go, typically pertain to a smaller work group. That's one way to get around the free rider effect. The smaller the work group, the less likely that's gonna be, right? So, Abby, if you're in a work group of a dozen people, how hard is it to kind of slack off?
Easy.
Pretty easy. What if it's 4? Right? If you've got a work group of 4, then Amanda and Carla and Stephanie are gonna be like, Abby ain't pulling her weight. We ain't gonna deal with this. We're not sharing our profit share with her. They're either gonna help her get on board or they're gonna help her get off the boat. Right? Okay, move on. Balanced scorecard, pay for performance programs. Yeah, like we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, having a balance of the pros and the cons to offset some of the risk, to put some of the risk on the stakeholders and some of the risk on the workers. That's kind of what we're talking about with a balanced scorecard. Where is that sweet spot for that work team? All right, managerial and executive pay. A lot of the executives, their pay can be tied to the performance of the company, and that can get really hairy when they start looking at quarterly numbers versus what's our 100-year goal, right? As opposed to if our company does 20% better in this quarter, then you get a $3 million raise, or not raise, but $3 million bonus. And so now that CEO is, even if they're a MacU grad and they're this outstanding example of morals and character, if anybody that's got something like that where you have a short time frame to make a big improvement, and you personally get a huge life-changing bonus, I think every one of us, not that we would choose it, but I think we would be tempted to cut corners, to cook books, to be ruthless with employees, whatever we've got to do to get that short-term number, so that then we find ourselves on the receiving end of that huge, radical, life-changing bonus, right? So that's definitely something to
It'd certainly be a temptation, wouldn't it?
temptation, yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
But that's why they would hire a MACU grad and do that, because they would care about the ethics.
This gets into a little bit of, let's see, actually it's kind of back to the beginning. Pay for individual employees. What are some things we can do to help motivate the individual employees? Well, one thing we can do is have them participate, right? Buy-in. What do you guys think we should do? How should we set up this compensation structure? Do you want to have 15% of your pay be variable to reflect a accomplishment of the 1,300 widgets? Or are you more comfortable with like 7 or even 3? Or hey, you feeling lucky, you want to do 25, right? But if we're letting them decide, or at least have participation and buy-in, then it's going to be a lot different versus here's what you shall do, and as opposed to what do you guys think we could do, right? And then it's like, oh, well, even if we don't do so hot with something that we came up with it, and we agreed to it, and either we are gonna make it or not, but it was our idea. So there's that buy-in that comes with that. What time is it? Oh, yeah. More details, I'm sure this is in your book. So, all right, we talked about how pay influences individual employees and some of the different pay programs, different scenarios that you could have, some of the pros and cons, how to kind of balance the pros and cons. We did talk a little bit about pay for executives, and we didn't really talk about process issues very much, but I think some of that was kind of folded in with some of the things Kalisha and Latrina said. And then pay strategy as compared to organizational strategy, it seemed like that we talked about that kind of in and out through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our chapter 12, and I do want to ask you guys again, to think about.
I'm gonna get my video. So
Sure. Think about what you can take away from this. Latrina had some specific examples that may or may not be applicable for Carla, and the same thing all around. You guys, you're gonna get to be in those positions, and Zane and Carla already have been in positions where they were able to structure compensation and potentially motivate people, or the opposite. And so knowing this stuff is setting you up for success, or at least to do better than what you've experienced, to get closer to that ideal work environment where people are going to want to work for you and want to work hard for you. And yes, part of that is going to come from extrinsic motivation, because hardly anybody's going to do that for free. But as long as you've got a fair extrinsic motivation system and a solid intrinsic motivation system, then I think you're really going to see performance from your employees, and the stuff that we talked about should help with that, right? So hopefully this was good lesson for you.
It was very good. I think you would make a great HR, person to go and motivate and so forth. Don't you guys agree? Very good. Thank you very much, Joshua.
You're welcome.
Good job. Okay, I'm totally messed up with what I do, guys.
Please stop share. The
Stop
red
share.
dot, yeah, the red.
There, thank you. Okay.
It's funny that you guys said something about a dog bone. This is actually a treat holder for dog treats. I hadn't had any dog treats in it, but